In a survival situation, you want cayennes on hand. And today we're going to talk all about cayenne peppers and how you can use these in a medicinal way and why these are a must in every home apothecary. So let's pick some cayennes and learn about them together today. Cayenne pepper has an incredible medicinal benefit for lots of different things. And a lot of people only think about cayennes in terms of using a seasoning to cook with or maybe to make hot sauce. But cayenne is super important for survival medicine. It is an incredible aid for shock in particular. So in a situation where, let's say, you have been injured and you've gone into shock, you can put cayenne pepper or cayenne extract in the mouth of the person that is in shock, and it can kind of wake them up and bring them back. This is a really popular method to use for natural care for animals. So for instance, let's say that we had baby goats. We have baby goats on the farm right now, and thankfully this didn't happen, but if one of those goats was born not breathing, we could take some ground up dried cayenne and we could pack it in that little baby's mouth. And sometimes that is enough of a jolt to cause the little baby to start breathing again. And so in the same way, in human survival medicine, if you have somebody who is going into shock, you can give them cayenne to kind of bring them back into their body. I mean, it's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be an unpleasant awakening, but it can save someone's life. Another wonderful use for cayennes is to stop bleeding. So you may have heard a story like this. I've heard it dozens of times where somebody cuts themselves in the kitchen. Maybe they're chopping vegetables and they cut the tip of their finger off. An old-timey remedy would be to pack that with cayenne pepper straight out of the spice cabinet, and the cayenne will actually stop the bleeding. And some people even say it helps with pain, which, you know, if you look at a lot of over-the-counter pain relief creams like Icy Hot or other muscle salves, the hot is usually from cayenne extract. So I'll tell you kind of a funny story about this. Cayenne is also really known for being good for shingles pain, and a lot of people will apply a cayenne salve or a cayenne cream to shingles blisters. So I tried that a few years back when I was dealing with shingles, and for me it was a disaster. Instead of helping with the pain, it made it so much worse. It lit me on fire. Now, I know other people who used it for shingles and said it gave them tons of relief. But this is a prime example of why herbs are personal, right? So cayenne may be excellent pain relief for you, but for me with shingles, it made it so much worse. So I will never do that again for shingles for myself personally, but it might work for you. So in herbalism, it's like this with all plants, not just cayenne. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work right for the other person. And that's why herbs are so incredibly personal, and God made us each differently. And so, of course, we each respond differently to plants. But cayenne is a must-have for survival medicine. It's also a really interesting plant. It's good for heart health. It's one of the best plants for heart health. And it has some adaptogen properties, and what that means is whether you're too high or too low, it kind of brings you to the middle. So with blood pressure, for instance, cayenne is really interesting because if you tend to have low blood pressure, cayenne can stimulate and bring it up. If you tend to have high blood pressure, cayenne can bring it down. And that's where the adaptogenic properties come into play. So how do you use cayennes in an emergency situation? Well, to stop bleeding, you want it in powder form, just like the cayenne pepper you buy at the grocery store. But we want to make our own, of course, and cayennes are so simple to grow. As long as you have a long enough growing window, you can grow cayenne peppers. And here in North Carolina, I start my cayenne seeds inside in February. And then we move them out to the garden when the plants are probably 6 to 8 inches tall. Once our first frost or our last frost of the spring has passed. And then they're usually ready to harvest now in September. And so we will pick all of these, and then I like to dry them just to store them. You could put them in a freeze dryer, or you can hang them to dry just like any other plant. But once they're completely dried out, you can just pop the stems off. You can pop them off almost like you're snapping beans. They pop right off. You want to pop the little stem off, and then you can throw them in a food processor once they're dry and just powder them up, and they'll be ready to use. You could also infuse it into an oil. So take your powdered cayenne and then combine it with some olive oil or coconut oil or jojoba oil, whatever your favorite is, and let it infuse for 6 to 8 weeks, and then strain it out, and you'll have a really nice oil to use for skin issues. And one of the best things about cayenne for skin is it's really good topically for things like neuropathy. So it stimulates blood flow. And so, like, for instance, my dad struggles with neuropathy where he can't really feel his feet, and it makes it hard for him to walk. So cayenne would be a really good remedy for him to try, because what it would do is stimulate blood flow to the feet. And would it burn a little? Maybe, but it's a good burn, and it's the kind of burn that is going to let feeling come back. He's going to go from feeling nothing to feeling a little bit of a burn, and then as the burn subsides, he'll still have feeling. And so that's sort of the gift that cayenne gives. But these beautiful peppers are more than food, they're medicinal, and I wanted to remind you of that today. So we're going to take these inside, and I'm going to show you the simplest way to preserve these so that we can use them as medicine in the future. One thing to keep in mind as you're harvesting your cayenne peppers, you only want the peppers. The leaves of any pepper plant are actually toxic. So if you're working with this as medicine, you don't want the leaves, and you want to pop those stems off too. You only want the pepper. So these are serrano peppers, and they look a little similar to cayennes, but here you can see the difference. This is the serrano, and this is the cayenne, and they have different properties. So we want these for medicinal. These are great for cooking, but this is what we want for medicinal. Sometimes if it's at the end of the season, I'll just pull up the whole plant, and then we'll pick them all off the plant. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's a little easier to work with this way. And if you have sensitive skin, it's okay to pick with gloves. So I do okay with these, but when it's time to pick like the habanero or the Carolina Reaper peppers, I'm wearing gloves because even just touching those can be a little too hot for my sensitive skin. Now we want the red ones for medicinal use because they're fully ripe. But these little green guys are still going to be perfectly fine to cook with. So I'm going to take these in, and we'll include these when we make hot sauce. We won't waste them. But we're going to dry the red ones to use for medicinal use because they're going to have peak benefits once they're fully ripe. So we'll save these in a different basket. Okay, let's preserve our beautiful cayenne peppers. So we're going to just need a simple needle and thread. And this is the easiest way to preserve cayennes. No fancy equipment needed. So I tied a knot at the end of my string. And we are just going to run the needle through the green cap at the top of the pepper. We want it to stay. So we're going to run it through the top. And then we're just going to slide it all the way down to our knot. And there's our first pepper. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way down until we have a full string. And then we will hang these up to dry. And you can hang them in the greenhouse. You could hang them in a sunny window, really wherever you want them to live. But the idea is just to get them all on a string together. So here we go. Let's string them all up. you know, if you want to get the maximum medicinal benefits out of cayenne, the big idea is just to use it often. And so that can even include just cooking with your cayenne pepper. Sort of similar to using garlic medicinally, cooking with it counts. So, you know, maybe you're cooking up a batch of collard greens out of your garden. To add some medicinal benefit for heart health, you could add some cayenne-based hot sauce to your collard greens as they cook. Or you could take a few of these dried cayennes once they're completely dried, and you could just throw them in to kind of flavor your broth or your brine. Just the more ways that you figure out to incorporate it, the more ways you're going to experience the benefits of it. And this one is pretty safe to use. Obviously, you don't want to get cayenne pepper anywhere near your eyes. That wouldn't be pleasant. And you just want to be mindful, like you would with anything else you're working with that's spicy or strong. But it can have such good benefits. And listen, if you don't want to sit and sew your peppers together like this, it's okay. I'll be honest with you, I'm not much for sewing. This is about one of the only reasons that I will sew voluntarily. But you can also preserve them in other ways. You could put them in a freeze dryer. You could put them in a dehydrator. You could even just lay these out on a screen in the sun or in your greenhouse and let them sun dry. You just want to let them go until all of the moisture is gone. And cayennes dry pretty quickly. They seem to not hold as much moisture as a lot of the bigger peppers do. So you'll be surprised at how quickly they dry out for you. But I really like this method of doing them on a string just because it's quick and easy. And once I have them strung up, I can hang them in the greenhouse and they'll be ready, you know, by winter for me to bring them in, and they'll be dry and they're beautiful. Like, I'll hang this in the kitchen window and then we'll pull from it as we need it. Or if we need to make a fresh batch of cayenne pepper, it'll be there and ready for us. So cayennes are more than food, and they're more than sort of a fun little garden commodity for hot sauce. They're actually medicine, and you should treat them that way. You should respect them for the benefits that they offer, and don't overlook them. You know, any kind of plant that's strong enough to bring someone out of shock, potentially stop a heart attack, stop bleeding, is a plant that we all need to know. And that, my friends, is cayenne pepper. Okay, here is my beautiful string of cayenne peppers, and now it's time to hang it to dry. So I'm in my greenhouse, and we're just going to hang this up and let it stay out here until it is completely dry. We'll check it about once a week. I expect this will take 2 to 3 weeks max, maybe less if we get some hot days. So let's hang it up and let it dry. Perfect. Well, we'll check back in a few weeks and we'll powder it up and we'll have another remedy to add to our stash. So let this be your reminder. Food is medicine, and all plants can be used in medicinal ways. We just have to learn how to use them. We have a good Father who gives us everything we need, including spicy cayenne peppers.